I think one of the purest joys you can feel is stumbling on something out there in the world that feels like it was made for you, just waiting for you to find it. Sometimes it's a book, or a TV show, or a character that makes you go, yes, exactly this. This is what I needed. Sometimes it's someone out in the world doing exactly what you hoped someone would be out in the world doing. It makes you feel seen, it makes you feel connected, and it makes you realize you're not nearly as alone as you've been feeling. I had this feeling when I found the White Dress Project, which may not make a lot of sense on the surface because the White Dress Project is specifically focused on fibroids, a condition I am not currently experiencing. But the way they were talking about fibroids, telling patients stories, sharing resources and information, fighting for more research and funding, made me go, yes, exactly this. The internet can be such a dark, lonely place, especially lately. But finding people and organizations like this makes me feel like maybe the cost might just be worth the benefit when it occasionally delivers potentially life-saving information and community, like the White Dress Project is doing. So what is the White Dress Project? What are they doing to improve the lives of people who have fibroids? What is patient advocacy, and why is it so necessary?
What's happening to your body, we don't know, because we've never really studied the female body. Say it's all in my head, but the research is quite spotty. No, we've never really studied the female body. I go to the doctor to get dismissed. Try losing weight, you're just anxious. That's fine, that's cool, I'm not pissed. Just wait 10 years for a diagnosis. Psychosomatic, you're so dramatic. Hysterical, emotional, hormonal, erratic. Heart disease, chronic fatigue, depression and anxiety. Do you have pain? No, you don't, because we've never really studied the female body.
Welcome back to Cramped, the podcast where I try to find answers to my and other people's questions about their period pain. I'm your host, Kate Helen Downey. If you just found this podcast, you might want to go back and start from the beginning of season 1, just to get the whole story of my death cramps, some of the history of women's healthcare, and the reasons why we've never really studied the female body, like the song says. If you'd like to support this podcast, and I really hope you do because we are a completely independent show, you can do that via our Patreon at patreon.com/cramped. Patreon members get bonus episodes, as well as access to our Discord community, which is full of other crampers sharing their own experiences and information that's helped them. And just a quick reminder, I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. Everything presented in Cramped is my own and other people's personal experiences. I am just a research nerd with a uterus and a microphone, sharing what I've found. Today, we're talking about fibroids and patient advocacy with the White Dress Project. So before we go any further, we have to do a little 101 on fibroids. Fibroids, or myomas, or leiomyomas, are non-cancerous growths that can be in or on the uterus. They're made of muscle cells and connective tissues, so they're dense and heavy. They can be teeny tiny or huge, from the size of a seed up to the size of a watermelon, which is terrifying. Some fibroids cause no symptoms, and some fibroids cause heavy, painful periods, pelvic pain outside of menstruation, pain during sex, bowel movements or urination, or a feeling of uncomfortable pressure. They can cause infertility. We still have no idea why they grow, or why some people get them and others don't, which is kind of nuts because they are incredibly common. Up to 80% of people with uteruses will have fibroids before they turn 50. And for Black women, it's more like 90%. And we don't know why. So if you have a uterus, there's a higher chance that you will get fibroids at some point before menopause than the chance that you won't. And yet, we don't hear a lot about them. Many people deal with severe pain, heavy bleeding, and other symptoms for years, while their providers dismiss it as just a heavy period. On the plus side, fibroids can be pretty easily seen on imaging like ultrasounds, and minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery can remove these fibroids and give relief from symptoms. Fibroids can grow back, and a hysterectomy is the only permanent cure. Given how common fibroids are, and how little this condition is talked about, and how often period pain is dismissed by gynecologists, it is incredibly important that there are places for people to easily find accurate information and resources about fibroids. The White Dress Project is doing that work. The White Dress Project was founded 11 years ago by Tanika Gray Valbrun, a journalist with CNN who struggled with her own fibroid journey before establishing a nonprofit dedicated to bringing awareness, raising funding, and increasing education about the uterine fibroid epidemic. I was able to hop on a call with Jonelle Henry, who was a senior producer at C-SPAN when she was diagnosed with fibroids. And now, well, I'll let her tell you.
Hi, I am Jonelle Henry, and I am the Director of Programs for the White Dress Project.
What brought you to work with the White Dress Project?
First of all, I believe I've met Tanika in a former life, so we haven't figured it out yet. But when I met her at a conference that I went to, and she, along with some other doctors, were doing a session on fibroids awareness. And at that time, I had been diagnosed with fibroids and I didn't really know what to do. They weren't really impacting my life in any kind of way. It was small. And so I listened very carefully to the information and we stayed in touch. And I thought this was such a niche and interesting way to talk about something that's below the belt that really doesn't get the same kind of energy or focus. And so I was really excited about what she had going on. And I just was really just like, I want to support this woman that's created this dynamic organization and community. Now, at that time, I didn't think I needed that community. I just thought it was like, hey, girl, hey, this is awesome. However I can support you, let me know. And within a few short months, I was calling her with a different story. Oh my gosh, this is getting really bad. What do I do? What are my treatment options? And so it turned from this admirer from afar to this, wait a minute, your organization actually helps me figure this out. And so we reconnected. And I remember one conversation I had with her right before my treatment, which was surgery. And it was the first time I was having surgery ever. So I was scared. And someone had given me some news about some other options that were more cost effective, less invasive. It was like 2 days before my surgery. And I panicked. I said, Tanika, what do I do? Should I consider this? Should I stop this? Scheduling surgery is a big deal, and it's not like you can just cancel and schedule next week. So this was months in the making at this point and just felt all over the place and confused. And she literally walked me off that cliff and said, hey, listen, you've made a decision. Your gut is telling you this is the right decision. You trust everyone that's going to be conducting your surgery. You've had conversations with them. You can do this. Do not let anything else get in the way 2 days before. And that really settled my spirit. And I was able to kind of confidently go in with the plan that I originally had and decided on. And the rest is history. After that, I was just like, what do you need? I'm there. I will tell my story. And I should backtrack too, because even before my surgery, Tanika had asked me to speak at the Night in White Gala, which is funny, full circle. I now curate that event for the organization. But that event, she asked me to tell my story. And it was the first time I publicly shared my story. That was about 2 weeks before my surgery. And so sharing my story to the world at that point was very liberating.
That's incredible. And when you say share your story, is there more to it than you got fibroids and you were going to get surgery?
Oh, yes.
Okay, tell me.
So I was having heavier and heavier periods and just really thought it was just, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, wow, all right, let me just double up on my products. Let me just make sure I have enough tampons, pads. And I don't think I realized that things were kind of getting out of control. 2 weeks before my 40th birthday, I went to get my annual, pap smear exam. And my doctor at the time said that, my stomach looked a little bloated. And I joked with her and I said, oh, I'm like totally scarfing down the carbs. I need to lay off of it. I'm turning 40 in 2 weeks. So I kind of laughed it off. And she's like, no, I know the difference between carbs and something else. So she's like, I want you to get some more tests. And I said, what's going on? And she's like, let me make sure first. And so got the test and she told me that I had fibroids. And I literally do not remember what she said after that. It was like in the movies, like everything got really blurry. Her voice was going in and out. She was looking at her chart and I just couldn't process this. Mind you, I am a full-time journalist where my job is to ask questions and to take information and break it down in bite-sized pieces for the audience. And I didn't know what to ask. I was embarrassed that I didn't even know what fibroids were. And I was like, my life is over. I heard things about reproduction and family planning. Like to this day, those are the words that I remember. options, treatment options, surgery, hysterectomy, like a whole list of things were mentioned. And I was just like, what's happening right now? After that appointment, I went into my car and I cried for like at least 20 minutes because I felt like I didn't know about my body and I'm a woman. And I'm like, I didn't know why my body was doing this. So at the time of the diagnosis, they were small and my periods were heavy, but it wasn't room for concern where I needed to do something in that moment. It was just like, can you manage what you're going through? The truth is, you're not supposed to. But at the time, that's what I told myself to calm myself down. We were going to monitor it, see if they would grow, see if they would change my lifestyle. And that was going to be the course of action. The next year, they completely upended my life. They got heavier, less manageable. I remember distinctly being in live breaking news situations where I had to decide whether I was going to leave the president giving remarks or I was going to run to the bathroom to change after going 30 minutes prior. So this was not sustainable. This was not manageable. Periods aren't meant to be running to the bathroom every 30 minutes and bleeding through your products that say super. So it was just very triggering.
Were you having a lot of pain?
The pain intensified. I didn't have as much as many of our community talks about, but the flow was so heavy. And I think for me, I didn't experience the heavy period pain that a lot of our community feels, but the emotional pain and scarring that took place, that was something that really impacted my story, that impacted me. So I wore black all day and I packed products. There were products everywhere. My purses were bigger. They were now pocketbooks and like tote bags and things like that. I walked into rooms and looked for seats that didn't have cloth on it because I knew plastic seats are easier to wipe up if there was an accident. My goal was to never have an accident. And so I drove myself crazy, literally thinking through all of the scenarios to avoid an accident. Pack this, pack that, wear black, don't sit here. I mean, I would be in church and the seats were cloth and I'm like, I'll just stand up. For 2 hours, Jonelle? That feeling of blood running down your legs and you trying to decide whether you're once again going to run to the bathroom again. It was just life-changing and it really stole all my joy. I was single at the time and dating, and I literally strategized all my dates around bathroom situations, around restaurants and places that I knew I could like escape from, that I can run away from. Always drove myself because if I had an accident, my car seats are leather and I just didn't want to have to explain that I was on my period. So it really took a toll on me. I'm like, this is my life. This is going to be my life. And I just got to pack better. And I think for me, the breaking point was the accident that I spent a year avoiding happened in a CVS. Just me, just going to get some stuff. I don't even remember what I was getting. And a very nice woman gave me the dignity and the respect to pull me aside and say, hey, there's a little stain on the back of your dress. I just wanted you to know. And so she's like, you're fine. Gather your dress and that will mask it. And I don't know her name. She was a perfect stranger. But I am so grateful for just the dignity she gave me in that moment. I dropped my basket full of items, ran out the CVS, ran into my car, and cried for a long time because I felt I had failed this little project that I was on to avoid an accident. And when I talk to our community now, accidents are so part of our story, but the emotional and mental toll it took on me to avoid an accident because I just didn't know how to explain this.
Yeah, you put it on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just like, this is my fate. What did I do to deserve this? Did I not do something? I always went to my appointments. I was just kind of at a loss as to why this was happening to me. We do a lot of work in this particular space on this point, but because it's not going to kill me, I felt like suck it up, deal with it. You don't have cancer. You don't have anything that's life-threatening. This is just heavy periods that causes you to run to the bathroom every 20 to 30 minutes. That's livable.
Right. This conditioning that because it's not going to kill us, we don't deserve any help or consideration, even though it's severely impacting quality of life.
Absolutely. So that really messed me up a little bit. And I think my story is helpful to those who think this is just a physical health condition. It is so emotional emotional and it is so mental. And that was the moment that I said, I need some support. And I got a therapist who is still my therapist to this day, because of course, unpacking my fear around surgery unpacked other things going on in my world. Just identifying that family planning was part of what I thought was part of my womanhood, part of what made me a woman. And if that was in jeopardy, or if there was some threat against that, what am I good for? I spoke those words as a senior producer at a major cable company and on top of the world in so many areas in life. And I literally was just like, well, what's the point? This is what women do, you know? And I don't even believe this, but I believed it for myself. And I just never questioned it wouldn't happen to me. So we worked through all of those things in therapy about, first of all, none of these things were facts at the time. It was just things that could happen. Certainly, the road might be more challenging for me as far as having kids, but it's not the end of the road. So that was a huge, huge turning point in my story. And I connected with a brilliant doctor, Joanne Jackson, here in Washington, D.C. And she looked like me, spoke like me, Caribbean background like me, talked about fibroids in a way that I can understand. And I trusted her completely with opening up my body, taking out those fibroids.
How did you find your doctor?
I went through the clinic that I always go through. And, you know, I have a good doctor story. We don't always come into those,
Right.
but mine is great. My OBGYN who did my pap smear told me, she's like, listen, this is not my specialty. I diagnosed it. This is not my specialty. I'm not even going to try to like wrap my head around this. But there's someone that I know that works in our office this is what she does. And so that was how she connected me. And again, another moment where I'm like, doctors, please do that. We get it. Tell us, let us know. I didn't feel bad when she said that. I felt relieved because I felt like, oh my goodness, like she's being honest with me and she's setting me up for success. And so my surgeon worked together with another surgeon that she admired, and together they performed my myomectomy. We saw 3 fibroids on sonogram, and then she took out about 9 or 10, if I remember correctly.
Ooh.
There's always more than diagnosed. That's what we're realizing.
Oh my God.
Took out more, and literally it weighed about 7 pounds,
Oh my God.
which explained why I felt like I was carrying a baby. 7 pounds. And when I saw it in the little jar, I said, oh my goodness, like, you know, I'm a tall woman, I'm plus size, so I hid it really well. But every day when I took my clothes off, I saw how I looked. And I just didn't understand this. And I thought it was carbs. But to see the fibroids in a jar, I was like, those bastards disrupted my life. And I was just so glad they were out. So it was a successful surgery. I had a great recovery, great support system. I really am the story that didn't run into those complications. And it's interesting because even my childhood, my career journey, I checked all the boxes, I did all the things. And I think along the way, I'm just like, my story doesn't matter because it ended well. It started well. I had support. Who wants to talk to me about my story? And I remember one of our community at an event said, no, we need your story because we need to know what it looks like when it does go right. What it looks like when your doctor listens to you, what it looks like when you come from a healthy and supportive parenting childhood experience that helped you go through this. Like, we need to know what that looks like. We need to have goals. And that gave me so much power and empowered me so much. I had fibroids. They were taken out safely. I had a great support system. And now I'm making sure that everyone else has the same experience. And I'm fighting for that.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible story. And the fact that like it went so well for you and you still want to help people. Like, I think sometimes if I have like a very smooth experience, sometimes I'm like, well, nobody needs help with this. But you are very aware of the times it doesn't go that well and you want everyone to be able to have that experience.
Absolutely. So that brought me to the White Dress Project. And I said, no one should be going through this alone. I made the mistake of doing that in the beginning, but the moment I opened my mouth, the support, I literally call myself like the fibroid whisperer. I talk about fibroids daily.
Yeah.
Someone's calling me, someone's in my DMs. I'm here to help you fight if you don't have any fight left, or to give you the tools so that you can fight on your own, and to remind you to take care of yourself holistically mind, body, and soul. It's all connected. I lean into the mental and emotional wellness because that was the part that really impacted my journey the most. And I don't want anyone to forget that. You need a doctor and you need a therapist and you need a support system and you need meditation. You need all the things to manage this health condition.
Yeah. It is not just one thing that you can go in and fix, no matter what it is. There are big things that will be big steps to recovery, but they're not going to work on their own.
Absolutely.
It was a big thing I had to learn as a workaholic who likes to have the answer and be able to do the thing and check the boxes. And it's like, no, you have to meditate and you have to take these supplements and you have to get these scans and you have to look at your nutrition and you're not going to know which thing is helping.
It's all of that. The cool thing about the White Dress Project, we're leading the organization, but we're also patients. My story didn't end and then I joined the organization. It is ongoing. My fibroids are back. Once again, they're manageable. But this time, as opposed to the first time, I'm armed with so much more information. I have access to so many specialists and health professionals who have all the treatment options you can think of. And time has happened. So more technology, more research, more specialties have come about. And so I feel much better about it going forward. And that, of course, helps us get into the justice part.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back for the justice part.
Cause we never really studied the female body.
Welcome back to Cramped. We're talking to Jonelle Henry of the White Dress Project, and we're just getting into how the organization advocates for patients with fibroids and what that even means. How does the White Dress Project work with the political system to make changes?
So we definitely partner on a local, state, and federal level with elected officials who understand what we're going through and gives us opportunities to be able to talk about those particular issues. In addition, we partner with advocacy groups that are doing the work on Capitol Hill. I live in DC, so here on Capitol Hill, but all across the world, really. And we partner with them because sometimes they're doing the work and we want to sign on to that. We definitely write white papers that have all of our information about our organization, but also the research that we're doing within the organization that helps to inform the attitudes, opinions about women that are managing fibroids. We do press conferences with organizations that want to amplify their message. And we also write legislation. And the White Dress Project wrote legislation to make July Fibroid Awareness Month. And so that legislation was passed. So July is formally Fibroid Awareness Month. And so we participate in the process in that way as well. And then, of course, supporting any kind of pending legislation that talks about fibroids, that talks about reproductive health or women's maternal health, any of those capacities. Those are all issues that we care deeply about.
There's so much talk about raising awareness. How does raising awareness help politically? How does it help move forward the care of people with fibroids?
Well, I think it puts a face to the issue, right? This can be like another women's health issue. Let the women's health groups deal with this. Let the doctors deal with this. But after the story that I just told you, if I told that to some of my male friends or some of my family or just even my community at large, it's going to change the way you think about fibroids because I talked about how it impacted me on the job. So part of this is telling our stories in a way that helps you to see us as not just another woman, not just another worker, but as a person, as a human, as your daughter, as your wife, as your mother. The women in your life could potentially be experiencing this. Do you even know what to ask, what to say, what to do? So it's definitely about humanizing the story and allowing you to see how fibroids disrupts our life every day. And on that note, we've started talking about not just how it disrupts our day, but how it also hurts your bottom line. If I'm never in the office because I'm at doctor's appointments or I'm having surgery that requires me to be out for a month, that impacts your work. That impacts your productivity on the job and millions of dollars are lost. It's kind of connecting the dots in that way We were invited to speak before Congress and to talk about fibroid awareness and what options are available and what support's available. And she really humanized it, but she talked about the bottom line and the impact that it has on the workforce, the impact it has on communities and in households, in homes. And so since you care about that, then perhaps you want to fund the initiatives and research that help us figure out how it got here to begin with.
Okay, we will be doing a whole episode later this summer about the financial impact of period pain. As a quick preview, there was a study in Australia that found that dysmenorrhea, or period pain, costs the Australian economy close to $9 billion a year. And the US economy is around 16 times larger than the Australian economy. So no spoilies, but I love that the White Dress Project is pointing out this connection to legislators. That all these people being in untreated pain actually affects the economy in a very tangible way. And that improving that situation would be very good for the economy. Probably better for the economy than stripping the NIH, if I had to guess. Okay, back to Jonelle.
Trying to connect the dots to help elected officials understand that if you're an elected official, everyday people elected you to that office. Out of that group of people, someone is managing fibroids right now. Someone is not going to work. Someone just lost a baby. Someone's being impacted by this health condition that we have no idea how it got here. Someone's being impacted by that and their life is changing. Those are the people that are voting for you. So you should listen to your community. And so sometimes you have to have that kind of posture to remind them of how important this is. And, the statistics are staggering. I mean, 80% of African-American women will be diagnosed with fibroids before they're 50. Wait a minute. That's like every other woman I know,
Yeah.
And it's like, do you connect to that statistic? Does that trouble you? Does that trouble your spirit? Can you go to work the next day with that number in your mind and not want to do something about it? Now, on the list of things that they want to fund and research and connect with, again, this is my personal opinion, that because it's not life-threatening, it doesn't get the same kind of attention because it's manageable. Manage it. Kind of like how we manage diabetes. No, you should still find a cure for diabetes, though.
Right.
What I have seen recently is Representative Shontel Brown, who came out with her own legislation around fibroid awareness and fibroid research and fibroid work. Having an elected official come out and talk about her story with fibroids and using her influence and her power as an elected official to come up with legislation, that's powerful. Representative Yvette Clarke from New York, same thing. Told her fibroid story and supports legislation around it and advocates for it because this affected her on the job, the elected position job.
Yeah.
So I think we're starting to see more of that come out. We're starting to see more members feel more comfortable talking about these issues. It's not just relegated to like a women's issue. This is now being pivoted as a family issue, as a community issue. You want women to show up 100%. You want them to be in your space feeling great, feeling like their whole selves. I mean, where would this world be without women? And so why aren't we doing everything we can to make sure they're getting everything that they need so that we can show up in this world and do the work that we're supposed to do?
It just sort of shows we need more people with uteruses in elected positions.
Absolutely.
To be doing, informed governing.
Exactly. Telling you how it is and creating their own front line for it.
It can start to feel very abstract when we talk about raising awareness and increasing funding and lobbying Congress for things, given how the election shook out, given the new/old administration. What can people do to advocate locally in their communities?
Attend your city council or local legislative meetings. They're generally open to the public. And, we don't go to those often enough until something major happens. So go and get a feel of like, what are the issues that your community is tackling right now? And if you see a space where they're not talking about women's health or women's reproductive health, then you can follow up. Or if you see that they're talking about that, then you can call that office, call that elected official and say, hey, what are you doing? What events or programs are you doing to amplify this message? That's a simple thing that you can do to get a lay of the land. I would also Google and see what your elected officials have said or what kind of legislation they've done around women's reproductive health. If they haven't done anything, give them a call. and let them know why this is important. And if they have done something, but let's say it's pending or there hasn't been any action on it, then get it started again and figure out a way that you can get it started again. But definitely give a call to the office. I am a believer in that old school method of calling the office. I know we can email, I know we can write letters and things like that, but there's just something about a call or even a visit. And I know that our time is limited, but those make such an impression. They can really see all of you in those experiences, your facial expression, your passion, your heart, your dedication. They can't dismiss your letter or delete it or put it aside. It's just no, you got to talk to me. I'm right here. So those are definitely a few things that you can do in your local communities, but also connect with the White Dress Project. We are working hard every day to provide that kind of information to you easily on our website.
Amazing. Thank you so much for talking with me. Is there anything else you want to share with people before we turn the mics off?
I cannot stress enough how you are not alone. I will not stop saying that because it needs to be said every single day, all day long. You are not alone on this journey. You may be on the part of the journey where it is a struggle, and you may be on the part of the journey where it's not so much of a struggle anymore. There is so much that we can learn about this together, so much that we can do together. At the White Dress Project, we are not just patient advocates, we are patients. And so we understand what you're going through deeply. We're here because we know that it's better to be together than to kind of do this on your own. So you are not alone. You have a voice. Your story is important. And wherever you are in your journey, we are here for you. And we love you. Without even meeting you, we love you. We love who you are, and we want to support you in every way that we can.
Women have always survived by sharing information and taking care of each other is what I have learned in my research.
Yes.
The system has never really taken care of us, so.
Exactly. So they're getting there, but we got to stay on top of them.
Part of the reason I decided to continue making Cramped instead of leaving it as a one-season limited series is that I saw these organizations like the White Dress Project and EndoFound and Nancy's Nook that were such amazing resources after you know what you're dealing with, after you have a diagnosis. But I didn't see a lot of support or organizations for people earlier in the process who were experiencing symptoms but didn't know what was causing them yet. You know, the limbo I was stuck in for 22 years. If you have fibroids, suspect you might have fibroids, or are just aware that up to 80% of people with uteruses will get fibroids before they hit menopause, go follow the White Dress Project on Instagram at WeCanWearWhite and check out their website for resources. See if they're doing any advocacy right now that you can help with. This is definitely a rising tide lifts all boats scenario. The more successful the White Dress Project is at getting more legislation passed and more funding allocated to fibroids and women's health research, the more resources all of us crampers will have. That's it for this week's Cramped. If you have had an experience with fibroids that you would like to share, we would love to hear it over on the Cramped Discord, which you can join by supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/cramped. If you have any further information about fibroids or corrections to make to any of the information we provided here, you can reach out to me on Instagram at Kate Helen Downey or email us at crampedpodcast@gmail.com. Cramped is hosted and created by me, Kate Helen Downey. Kelsey DeLonzo is our editorial producer. Sound design and mixing is by Kelly Kramerick at Maven Post Media. Cramped's incredible theme song is written and performed by Faraday. Our podcast art was created by Nicholas Shepard.
What's happening to your body? We don't know because we never really studied the female body.